A very warm welcome to you all this afternoon. Thank you for sharing your time with us and for sharing your time over lunch with us. This is the first meeting of our Sport and Activity Social Enterprise Network. I'm Jane. I'm part of the membership team here at Social Enterprise Scotland with my colleague Amy, who's also on the call today. Most of you, I think, will know us, but just in case, we are the national intermediary and membership body for social enterprises in Scotland. And our job, very basically, is to champion all things social enterprise. So it's to promote, support, connect, and represent the sector. So we all know that social enterprise is a diverse sector, different sizes of organisations, different geographies, different industry sectors, different social missions, different beneficiaries. And we also know the huge value in connecting social enterprises, whatever stage of development they're at, and providing opportunity for knowledge and experience exchange, for peer support, to explore opportunities to collaborate, ultimately for the benefit of the sector, the communities and the people of Scotland. So as part of that, we've established a number of thematic networks, thematic SENs. The others, so this is one, sport and activity. The others are health and well-being, employability and community spaces. And it's all to bring people together around a common theme. I think probably it's important to say at this stage, some of you may remember the thematic networks that SENSCOT used to run. And whilst Social Enterprise Scotland doesn't have the capacity to run the networks in the same way, we're hoping that we can achieve some of the benefits that those networks achieved also. So I guess just quickly, the Zoom rules, the Zoom housekeeping. If you can keep yourself on mute when we've got presentations happening, that would be much appreciated. If you want to come in at any point, you can raise a real hand or a virtual hand, whichever you prefer. And, obviously use the chat if there's any comments you want to make, any questions you'd like to ask, that sort of thing. We will share the presentation from today, and Ailidh's happy for her email details to be shared with you all as well. So it's a very straightforward format. It's a straightforward format. It's quite difficult to say for today. I'm going to hand over to Ailidh shortly, and then it will be over to you for your part of the session. So as mentioned before, when we get following Ailidh's presentation, we'll stop the recording so that it becomes a safe and hopefully informal space that kind of has a level of confidentiality for you. Okay, that's enough from me, I think. When we were initially planning this session, Sported were my first thought for a guest speaker. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Ailidh Hood, who's National Manager for Scotland at Sported. And I will let you I will let her tell you more about what they do. Ailidh, over to you.
Great, thank you, Jane, and lovely to meet you all here where you're all from. I'll start off by saying I'm sorry in advance. I had an unplanned dentist appointment this morning, so I might sound a little bit mumbly. So hopefully you can all understand. The numbingness is dying down, so yeah, apologies if I'm not the clearest as I could be. But yeah, it's great to be on. I pulled together a quick PowerPoint that I'll just get loaded up right now. Pretty much the aim for today would be for me to run through a kind of overview on what Sported is, what we offer, how we work, and at any point, either throughout the presentation or at the end, feel free to jump in with any questions or anything you want to ask. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Should be on your slide. Great. So I'll just kind of give you an overview of Sported as we start. So Sported is a UK-wide charity. We actually launched back in 2008 as a legacy for the 2012 Olympic Games. And 17 years later, we are now the largest grassroots sports charity in the UK, which we're very proud of. Essentially, we're using the power of sport and physical activity, and we're looking at how we can help clubs and community groups to be more sustainable for the future. If I was to kind of put it into a nutshell, that's how I would describe it. Our network's currently got around 5,000 grassroots sports clubs, covering lots of different sports and activities. And probably the headlines for us would be around improving health and well-being, tackling inequality, and having safer and more connected communities. Um, I just, oh, it's not moving on. Hold on. 2 seconds. I'll just try and just. Oh, there we go. It should be a second slide. So yeah, so pretty much our purpose, as I've said, is really to engage grassroots sports to build brighter futures and create that stronger community. Really, for us, is we want grassroots sports and communities to survive. We want to be in 10 years' time the groups to have grown, to have thrived, and to still be here. And we're very much aware of all the challenges. So we want to help, but really want to empower the communities so that they've got the resources they need themselves to continue and to grow around that. So what does that really mean? So essentially there's four strands to Sported. So we're looking at that building that sustainable grassroots sports clubs. We also provide grant funding. We look at delivering outcome-based programs, and then we also do a massive part around research and advocacy. So really kind of getting into in depth of the insights of what's actually going on the ground and what do we need to know that we can then use to our advantage to then help those on the ground. So that's probably the four areas, and I'll touch on those as we go throughout. The biggest one being really is that building sustainable grassroots sports clubs. That is the bulk. And then providing grant funding, we work with different partners for that. And likewise, we partner up with lots of governing bodies, additional charities, corporate sponsors, and we can deliver outcome-based programs for them as well. So we're very flexible in what we can do. We've dipped our toe in different things over the last, kind of 17 years, and we've got really strong in certain areas. So kind of what do we do? Who do we work with essentially? So we pull data from our groups on a biannual basis. Now, 60% of the groups currently engaged with are led entirely by volunteers. 30% of those groups have an annual income of less than £10,000, and 49% of our groups are located in the lower 30% areas of deprivation. So for us, that kind of really signifies we're working with the right groups. We're really working with the areas of need, and we're really working on how we can help improve what's going on. 86% of our groups have told us that they help get young people active again, so they're inactive into active. And our group leaders also tell us about the benefits they see from physical activity. Now, listening to everybody on this call, I can hear you all already know exactly the benefits of physical activity, so I know you know, but obviously there's just the never-ending list, but that kind of improved mental health, self-confidence, self-esteem, reducing anxiety, and so on, which is great for us to hear that they're feeding that back to us. So as I mentioned, we do what's called a pulse survey. Now that's a biannual survey where we go out to our groups, to our volunteers, and we ask them a series of questions so we can try and pull in as much data as possible. And then we can then collate that and generate reports that go to government, go to councils, and it'll help us really justify why we need more money in the sector, why we need more grants available, and how we're best to support the groups on the ground. So groups are most interested in support from us, but 36% of them want that financial sustainability. They want revenue generation, which is not a surprise. It is very common when we're speaking to groups that the finance is one of the biggest worries. And we ask groups around how confident they are about being here next year, or how confident they are about being here in the next 6 months. And it declines dramatically when you think about how comfortable they are being here, and then if they're going to actually last the whole year round. So we want to make sure that our groups are here for as long as they want to be here and are sustainable and are thriving. We look at engaging to find out how we can support what people want to know more about. Community asset transfer. So 24% of our groups are interested in finding out about that. There's a lot of community asset happening, especially in Glasgow City at the moment, with Glasgow Life releasing a lot of properties. So there's lots of people wanting to know how they do it, how do they get involved. So we've got volunteer consultants that can support with that. We also look at what priorities are for people in groups. So groups want to be engaging new participants, they want to be recruiting volunteers, but also retaining current volunteers, retaining participants, planning for the future, and then also responding to any local challenges that are being faced. So what we find is through engagement with our groups, they're telling us the same themes, and we can then join the right people together to have that shared responsibility and also that peer-to-peer learning of what they've done and how that's worked well for them. in that space. So what does Sported actually do with these groups? So in a nutshell, we essentially offer different strands. So our kind of most bespoke, which I'll touch on after this, is we offer one-to-one support where we actually give a volunteer consultant to a group for a period of time to take them through a project. So I'll come back to that one. We have what's called our Sported Hub. Now this is our online platform. Now that's completely free of charge. So I should have said this at the start, Sported is completely free of charge. We are a charity. We are free of charge, we'll always be free of charge, and we're open to all to sign up. So our Sported Hub is our online platform, and that is essentially full of resources, guides, templates, business planning documents that can be accessed at any point by any group that can help them with their planning. We run regular webinar. Now these are UK wide and Scotland wide. So depending on what the topics are will depend on what you'd be interested in. But we run things around like legal structures. We run things around business planning, development planning, volunteer recruitment. Recently done a few on LGBTQ plus engagement, inclusion engagement. So we have a series of webinars that run that are really popular. We also provide a monthly funding bulletin. This is unique to the area that you're based in, and it will tell you what funding opportunities are available that you can tap into. And then if you need any support in applying for anything, you can then contact us to get some volunteer consultant support with that. We also have what's called grant distributions. So we're quite fortunate that we actually partner with corporates, and we essentially become their grant distributor. So the kind of most recent one for us was People's Postcode Lottery. So they actually gave the Scotland Sported team 100 grand last year, and we distributed that in 100 grants of £1,000 out to our network, and that was for impact around what could they do with it. So it varied. It was completely up to the group how they wanted to spend that. The only restriction was it had to be on that kind of sport and physical activity and engaging a community group. Barclays is another headline sponsor for us, and they run their Barclays Community Sport Fund, which focuses in on football, cricket, and tennis, and that's because that's their three big sporting corporate events with Wimbledon, Lords, and yeah, so that's where they're focusing in on those ones. And again, that's funding that's available, and we control that grant, so our network has access to that through us, which is really helpful. We also offer regional support and networking events. So not too dissimilar to this type of idea, we pull together key people in the same areas, and we offer them the chance to talk about what's working well, what could work better, what could we do as a community group, is there anything we could pull resources in to help with. And we also run specific programs and projects, which again can be partner led or funding led. So we engage with corporates, trusts, and foundations. So depending on what that looks like, we can do place-based specific projects and programs in that space. I said I would touch on the bespoke support. So that selling point for Sported is we're very fortunate that we have a team of, we call them volunteer consultants, but they are business professionals that have given up time or hours for us that we can utilise for our groups. So, and of course, that's still free of charge. So, what that really means is a group can approach us with a challenge or say they need support with X, Y, or Z. We would then pair them up with a business consultant, and that would either be a kind of kickstart, short term or long term, depending on what the group was looking for. And that what they would have that one-to-one engagement for the duration of that placement to hopefully get to the outcome they're looking for. That can vary from face-to-face engagement, again geographically depending on where people are based. Face-to-face engagement, it can be Teams, it can be Zoom calls, WhatsApp, phone calls. It completely varies depending on what the group needs, and we'll support them all the way through that. And we're finding at the moment we're getting varying requests, but it can be around future planning, it can be around funding applications, but it can also be around marketing, like how do they outreach into their community, how do they drum up attention. And so we've got quite a range on that. Just going to give you a quick overview of what we're at in Scotland at the moment. So we currently have 394 members. So that's groups or sports clubs that have signed up to Sported and they've joined our free network. You'll see the blue dots kind of where they're spread across Scotland. We currently have 32 volunteers on our database in Scotland as well, but we also have access to the UK-wide team. So if there's a particular skill set that someone's looking for, we can make that connect, but obviously that would be solely online. but we do have access to that. And there's currently 4 staff members in Scotland alone. So we've got myself as national manager, we have a national delivery officer, a services officer, and then we've just recently appointed a place-based network coordinator up in Sutherland, up in the Highlands, and that will be a specific role for that area. And that one. Now, of our membership, we tend to split regions just because it's a little bit easier to try and understand what's happening where. Under Not surprisingly, the blue, which is our central belt, is our most condensed area. We've got the most network groups signed up there. If you go to Highlands and Islands up the north, which is green, you'll see we're quite looking quite stretched out. But we do have some pockets. Over to the right, we've got our northeast, which is the red. And then southern Scotland coming down over from Ayrshire all the way over to the likes of the borders. Our groups completely vary. So we have the kind of traditional sports like rugby, football, basketball, they all kind of sign up. We also have a lot of multi-sport groups. Sorry. We also have a lot of multi-sport groups. We have like equestrian, we have mountain biking, but we also have walking groups, we have yoga. We're very much either a sport or physical activity or any sort of movement. So we have tech ball, which we've never heard of that before, which is new. So we're very open to, as long as it's a physical activity or an activity that you're engaging in, you're welcome to join our network, and we're more than happy to support in that space. On that one. So I've got a couple of just case studies just to give you an example of groups that we've worked with and kind of how that's looked. So this is a group called Stable Life, which is in the Scottish Borders. Now they're an equine therapy group. So they actually received one of our £1,000 People's Postcode Lottery grants. So just a nice quote in the middle around how that's helped them kind of give 42 young people some sessions, which is really useful. And they've also kind of accessed our monthly funding bulletin. They've come along to our webinars, they use our hub online, and they've had that one-to-one support as well. Um, and then another example, which is actually up in Aberdeenshire, which is Ride and Peace Adventures, which is a mountaineering group. Now they also are lucky that they secured one of our £1,000 People's Postcode grants that they used to take 16 teenagers through a programme, which removed that barrier to entry for them. And they currently actually have one of our business consultants out on placement with them. So they have a man called David Morgan, and he's specifically working on legal structure guidance. So that's what they've asked for. So they're exploring options for the group around what their legal status currently is and what it could be. Could it be a community interest company? Could it be a community amateur sports clubs? And then kind of what are all the ramifications that fall into that? So he's going through that, and again, that's through he's having phone calls, emails, Zoom meetings, and WhatsApp. So he's taking that group through on that journey with them on that current short-term placement. As I mentioned, we work with specific partners and projects. So we currently have 2 trusts and foundations that are partnered with us. So we've got Garfield Weston, which is run specifically, in southern Scotland. So that's really looking at the kind of Ayrshire over to Dumfries and Galloway, as I said, and we've got some kind of focus work happening there around increasing our engaged groups, looking at establishing a community network, looking at collecting insights. We also run what's called our Young Influencer Programme, where we take young people through an accredited qualification. So that'll be happening in depth there. And then separately, we have what's called the Westminster Foundation, which is happening up north, which is the Sutherland region, which is the Highlands. And I mentioned that part-time staff member coming on board that's specific to this project. And that's really focusing on rural community network, looking at kind of giving young voices programme, and again, some more insights collecting and that partnerships being established in that space. So yeah, so pretty much joining Sported, we're open all the time. Eligibility is pretty basic. You have to be based in the UK, delivering or supporting sport and physical activity or movement, and a non-profit group, organisation or club, or intending to use any profit for public good is essentially the kind of rules. Who wouldn't be eligible would be schools, further higher education, or any of the kind of uniformed organisations. But as I mentioned, our website is actually completely open, so anyone at any point could jump onto our resource hub if they wanted to, and still access some of the benefits that are there. And then yeah, this is just the final thing, which I know is going to get sent out to you all. But if anyone is interested in Sported or would like further conversations or thinks it'd be something that'd be a good fit for their group to get involved in, we'd welcome you to get in touch. You can scan it, you can email, you can phone. It's up to you. So this will be shared with you as well on that space. And if I just stop sharing, now I appreciate that was a bit of a whistle stop tour of Sported, but very open if anyone has any questions, I suppose, or thoughts or anything they want to add.
Thanks, Ailey. That was great. I mean, I already knew a bit about Sported, but I don't think I quite recognise the level of support that you can provide. So I think it's really good to hear that. And there's obviously so much similarity between the organisations you're working with and the organisations we work with as well, in terms of, kind of operating in deprived communities, looking at sustainability. Community asset transfer comes up quite a lot for us. Funding comes up quite a lot for us. Yeah, so yeah, there's quite a lot of, I think, commonality there. So does anyone have any questions for Ailidh initially? Linda, hello.
Apologies for being negative here.
No, okay.
I've had various contracts which have only lasted 3 years. So you've been in operation since 2008, did you say?
Right, yep, 2008 years when Sporty was launched, yep.
So what guarantee do you have that you're going to be here in 10 years' time?
So we've been here for the last 17 years and we're growing every year as we're progressing on. But for us it's about becoming sustainable, as self-sustainable as well. So we're constantly looking at engaging corporates, engaging partners. But like everyone, we're all trying to survive. But yeah, we've actually grown our team dramatically over the course of that to become more self-sustaining. We've now got a full trust and corporate department that are constantly outsourcing and looking at how we're kind of keeping self-sustaining, and looking at keeping our reserves up, for example, so we can keep engaging. So yeah, and I said we are the largest UK charity for grassroots networks. So for that network piece, so we're not planning on going anywhere. And that, if anything, we're just going to keep growing.
Thanks, Ailey.
Well, that's good to hear. It's just, as you know, it's very hard to start in business, and the world that we live in, things don't last very long. So it's knowing about you, but are you still going to be here? That's all, because things do change very dramatically, especially when it comes to funding and all this sort of stuff.
Yep, definitely. And I said all our resources are also online as well. So in the worst case scenario, if we ever had to strip back, all our stuff would still be there as well. We've got a full hub resource that's there that's free to access, and that will always remain free. And as anything we do, we constantly update our library on as well. So we've got all the resources as we're going. So there will always be a resource available from us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I think everybody is finding it difficult these days, and funding is ever more difficult and competitive, and there's more restrictions coming in around funding that makes it yeah, even harder. So yeah, good to hear that you plan on sticking around, Ailey. Anyone else want to come in with a question or a comment? How many of you knew about Sported already? Jayne, you did, and Fiona and Catherine, rightio. So there's a few folk here that didn't know. So I guess from that point of view, potentially support available to you. Catherine, do you want to come in?
Yes, currently Nordic Walking is pretty much caters for the over 50s population, and it's fabulous people with long-term health conditions. But together with the International Nordic Walking Federation, we're developing training modules for children, because we realise a lot of kids don't maybe like traditional sport, and we've run a trial in Bristol, and they love the Nordic Walking. And it helps them in things like DV, or it's just a way to get out, and they don't have to wear sporty gear, etc. So I was pleasantly surprised to see on your list of activities that there's walking groups there. So I don't know whether maybe after this meeting it'd be interesting to find out what your walking groups do and whether they'd be interested in adopting Nordic walking or any of the other groups.
Yeah, as said, we've got such a variety on our list, and we're almost over 400 groups that are part of our network, and they're all a little bit different and operating in their own ways. So yeah, no, we'd certainly welcome Nordic if you wanted to get involved, and then there's options for like how other groups are working. But for us, really, as long as you are community-based and our physical activity or movement, then, you know, the door's kind of open for us. Again, just we don't want to put in, we do have traditional sports clubs, but we also have a lot that are not. And that's why governing bodies like working with us, because we actually reach out a lot further than they can with the traditional sport.
Cool. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Okay. Any other questions just now? I mean, obviously, if you want to follow up with Ailidh following this meeting, feel free. We will share the presentation and, as I say, Ailidh's contact details. Okay. So thank you to Ailidh. Thank you all for coming along, particularly when we do know how precious your time is. And I'll send an email out hopefully later this afternoon with Ailidh's details, the presentation, and follow up with any of you out with that we've talked about. So thanks again, and see you soon.